You are now listening to a podcast made in collaboration with the Copenhagen College Radio.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 46 of the Social Media and Politics podcast, bringing you expert insights into how social media is changing the political game. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, political scientist at the University of Copenhagen. You can connect with us on Twitter at SMNP Podcast or visit us on the web, www.socialmediaandpolitics.org. Yes, that's right. I finally got around to building that website, which is, again, socialmediaandpolitics.org. It's got all the episodes on there, a little bit of background about the show, and it's even got a link to sign up for a newsletter, not the Axios newsletter, but the Social Media and Politics newsletter that I'm going to be starting probably next month. And the idea behind it is not so much to present you with the news updates on social media and politics. I think the Axios newsletter and Eric Wilson's Learn, Test, Optimize do a great job of that. So what I'm planning to do for this newsletter is kind of as I line up guests for the show, send out to subscribers who's going to be on the show and what the kind of idea behind that is and why it's relevant. And then the idea is that you would be able to submit questions that you would find interesting for your work or your interests that I can then ask the guests on the show. So a way to get a little more interactivity with you guys and bring in your feedback into the production itself. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and I will stop promoting the Axios newsletter. But thank you to everyone who signed up for that. I hope you found it valuable. And I don't think we hit 250 signups, but regardless, I am going to go to DC and interview someone at Axios about the role of social media for political news publishers, which I'm super excited about. So thank you to everyone who helped out with that. Now to today's show. We're going to be talking with Tom Lillywhite, who runs an agency in the UK called Wilder Digital and is the founder of a new social media campaigning tool called PAC, which we're going to unpack in this episode. But just to give you a little bit of context before I cut to the interview, PAC is a kind of new social media tool that harnesses the power of citizens, or who we're going to call micro-influencers, that can campaign alongside an organization and help promote its reach. So users are called wolves, and they join these PACs that the campaign can then mobilize to let out a concerted howl on Facebook or Twitter. And so we dig a bit into how that type of campaigning can affect organic reach for a campaign. But just to give you a little bit of figures that are also in the interview, for an organization with a Facebook page of about 330,000 people, typically they'll get about 7% organic reach and maybe get 300 clicks out of a post. Whereas a PAC of 95 supporters, when they share a message, can generate over 8,000 clicks. So there's two factors at play here. One is that we know from, marketing research, but also academic research, that people are much more likely to engage with content from their peers rather than from an organization or a political campaign. So that's number one. Number two is that we know Facebook has changed its algorithms recently to play down content from pages and prioritize content from friends. So that means that campaigns can immensely benefit from a kind of bottom-up style of campaigning where you're sharing content among your friends rather than more top-down posts, which we know the limits in organic reach are meant to incentivize people to take up advertising. Caveat: advertising is super controversial at the moment with the Cambridge Analytica scandal and what we were talking about in our last episode about the Transparent Referendum Initiative. So I think PAC is a cool way to engage supporters, make them feel like they are contributing to the campaign and actually having some offline impact, which we'll also discuss in the episode. So now let me bring on Tom Lillywhite. He is the founder of Wilder Digital and creator of PAC, which is currently being used in the London local elections for the Camden Labour Party that are going on as I record this. So I can't give you an idea as to the results, but we're going to talk a little bit about that political use of PAC in the episode. So without further ado, Tom Lillywhite. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time out and welcome to the Social Media and Politics podcast.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Can you start out by giving us an idea behind PAC? Like, what are the motivations and what does the platform do?
Yeah, of course. PAC is a new social media campaigning tool for political campaigns, for non-profits, for any sort of cause-driven organization. And the idea is that it puts people at the center of social media campaigns. We believe that these organizations and these campaigns have really passionate people that want to support it, and we want to give them the confidence and the tools to do that really effectively. I guess to give a bit of context around that, I run a digital agency based in London called Wilder Digital, And we work with nonprofits and campaign organizations and some politicians to help them deliver great digital campaigns, basically, whether that's across social, email, that kind of stuff, mostly focused on social. And across all our clients, we kept seeing the same kind of problems come up, mainly around a massive drop in organic Facebook reach from pages. Over the past 4 years, they've seen a massive drop. So we measured that around 40% over 4 years. So they're losing a lot of this traffic that they would normally rely on to sort of drive campaign messages and get support from their biggest advocates and stuff like that. So they were seeing that across the board. They were seeing that drop. And they were having to rely on ads to sort of fill that space. And I guess exemplified by the last few months with Cambridge Analytica and all that entails, those ads can be seen in a very different way than an organic post can be. And there's a difference in trust level between those. So that was another problem we were seeing, that these ads weren't being as effective potentially. The third point that we were seeing across all of our clients was that each one of them had a core group of supporters that were incredibly passionate about what that organization or that campaign was trying to achieve. So, whether they're members or like volunteers or just supporters, they really gave up a lot of their time, a lot of their money in a lot of cases to try and achieve the objectives of that organization. So we basically try to put those two things together, like organic page reach is down, trust in ads is down, but there's a load of passionate people out there, and try and put those together and try and put those passionate people at the center of these campaigns and try and give them the tools and give them the content to be, first out the box.
Right. And so PAC it's a platform that kind of crowdsources social media activity. So it kind of harnesses the power of all these different micro influencers, which is what I want to ask you about in a second. But can you kind of talk a little bit about the functionality behind PAC? Like, what exactly does it do and what value does it provide for campaigns?
Sure. So each organization or campaign can create a PAC, and that leaves them with like a PAC profile page, like a landing page, where they can encourage people to sign up. And when they sign up, people become wolves. And then the PAC all howls at the same time, which is basically when you all share a message on social media talking about the same kind of thing at the same time. And that creates like a spike in conversations. So the post isn't coming through the channel of the organization, it's coming through the voice of your supporters.
Right. So first of all, I love the metaphor between the packs and the howls and the wolves.
Yeah, we really went for that one.
But so basically, you were seeing a decline in organic reach. That's also something I've been looking at as well, which is if you're a brand or a campaign, you're only hitting somewhere between like 5% of your subscribers on an organic basis.
Yeah.
So PAC is a way to kind of take everyday citizens who are already wanting to express their political opinion and then just kind of amplifying that message.
Yeah, exactly. And especially following the news from the last sort of 3 months, I guess, around the even bigger changes to the Facebook algorithm that Mark Zuckerberg introduced, where they reduced the prevalence of page posts on people's news feeds and increased the value that people have. So increasing the value of peer-to-peer engagements. Mm-hmm. So that all plays towards the value of PAC and the value of empowering your supporters to be your voice.
Right, which is the idea of these micro influencers, which I think is cool because we often talk about like, on Instagram, you'll have celebrity influencers or, YouTube stars. But this idea of the micro influencer is interesting. Can you kind of unpack what exactly do you mean with micro influencer?
Yeah, sure. So we see micro influencers as everyday users of social media. We don't think you have to have a massive following or even consider yourself to be particularly influential over one thing or another. It comes down to the fact that people listen to people. I mean, if you were to go for like a drink or a coffee with one of your friends and they recommended a film or expressed an opinion, you'd be much more likely to take that seriously than if you saw an ad for that film or for that opinion, because you'd think, oh, that person's trying to tell me this thing, why should I believe that? But if you people trust their peers, and therefore I think these micro-influencers, as we're calling them, have incredible untapped value for political campaigns, for non-profits, and for sort of cause-driven organizations.
Yeah, and so I know we've heard it a couple times in the podcast series that especially with NGOs and advocacy organizations, they've used a tool called Thunderclap, which is used to promote a hashtag or something along those lines. Kind of, what are the differences between your platform and Thunderclap?
Sure. Well, Thunderclap is a fantastic tool. So it selects a point in time and everyone signs up for one message and then it all blasts out. And the idea of that creates a spike in conversations. That concept is very similar to PAC, but we're more interested in sort of a long-term relationship that both political parties or politicians or non-profits have with their supporters, and trying to build that trust and to build that into like a real, into a pack of supporters that they can mobilize at any time. And we're much more interested in people having their own voice in these platforms. So maybe suggesting a theme and providing some context, but then the supporters themselves coming up with that message. Because I think Thunderclap is brilliant. It can potentially be a little spammy sometimes, and we try to avoid that and really try to make it flexible and different, and just it's really focusing on that individual supporter's relationship with their peers.
And is a Thunderclap only like one-off?
Yeah, Thunderclap's a one-off event. Yeah.
So PAC is a way to kind of, as the name implies, kind of have a more sustained message and kind of build a more community around the campaign itself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So like you can howl lots of times over the course of a campaign, and the idea is that once you've got those people interested enough to share one thing, like the chances of them sharing another thing are really high, and they want to be involved in some way. And as I say, these supporters give like masses of their time and money and effort in other ways, whether that's like door knocking or whether that's canvassing or anything. They'd be willing to see the impact that their social shares have in adding to the success of a campaign. And I guess that's another slight difference. So we're really interested in showing people the value that they add to the campaign. So people get PAC points and they can see the amount of people that have clicked on their posts, which for someone not involved in digital marketing or not involved in pages and stuff like that, that's quite an interesting thing to see, actually, that I shared this post and 25 of my friends actually clicked on that and were actually interested in what I have to say. It's not about likes and shares. It's about unique one-to-one interaction.
So it also has this kind of gamification system, I guess, where on the one hand, you get rewards for participating, but on the other hand, you get this kind of analytics that incentivizes the user to participate in the house.
Yeah, exactly that. We're building that concept into different parts of the platform at the moment, and using that concept that people like to see their impact. They like to know that, I've done something for this organization. What impact did it have? What effect did it have? And I think that's really interesting. I think we've got a massive opportunity to offer that, even when it comes to donations around campaigns. So I shared this free message, and actually, because my friends clicked on it, generated £100, $100, or whatever is in donations for that charity.
So it's actually linked to donations, not just social media analytics.
This is our next plan.
Oh, okay.
Give me a little
That's cool.
Future insight into our roadmap there.
Right. Because in the academic research, there's a debate about, is social media participation slacktivism or just clicktivism? And I think that one of the criticisms is that we can't find a correlation between offline impact. And I think by incorporating how much donations your social media post brought in, I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question that I have to deal with a lot in my day-to-day job. Like, is what we're doing worth investing in for charities? Is it going to give them the impact? It's same for political campaigns. Is it going to give us the real world results? And I think that our aspiration is to sort of try and blur that as much as possible, and to try and show that actually digital can have a massive impact in the real world. And whether we have to do that, post by post and showing people exactly what they've done, or maybe we can say, for like the Calais migrant crisis here a few years ago, there was massive campaigns around getting more blankets or getting more clothes or stuff like that. Maybe in the future we were able to mobilize a PAC around that, that they could see, actually, you managed to 500 people sent in blankets because you all shared this message,
right,
or all this kind of stuff. And having that real world impact is really important for us to try and achieve.
And just looking at the website, I saw that it's for both Twitter and Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. At the moment, it's just those two.
Because I think the whole idea of PAC kind of goes to this idea of virality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask about, like, what are the differences that you observe between Twitter and Facebook in terms of virality, and kind of how is that built into the platform?
That's a really interesting question. I guess it really depends on the objective of the campaign, based on which one of those is most important to you and the kind of influence you're after. So obviously, like, Twitter is filled with if you're looking to sort of influence decision makers or something like that, Twitter could be a great place for you. It's increasingly professional, very politically active citizenship on there. Politicians, journalists, comedians, trolls, living it up on Twitter. But then the rest of the world sits on Facebook and gets on with their lives. So the difference we see is actually the scalability of Facebook is much more interesting for us, and people have their real friends and real family on there. So if we're looking for this real peer-to-peer trust, that someone that I know shared this post, therefore actually I'm much more interested in that. Facebook is slightly more interesting for us in that department. But when it comes to decision makers and getting something seen by a journalist or getting something seen by other politicians, if you're trying to influence change from an NGO perspective, then Twitter potentially provides the best avenue for that. The way we approach them are slightly different with PAC. So some of the API changes, which is the way that we connect with Facebook and Twitter, change and are in flux constantly, which we have to react to. And so they are slightly different. So for Twitter, for example, you can suggest a pre-populated message for someone to share, and Facebook, you can't do that. So you share a link. So there's just a few subtle differences between that.
And what kind of data can you pull out of the platform? Because I suppose that users authorize access so that you can connect with the platform itself. So are you collecting any type of data, and is it being used in any way for the campaigns?
So first of all, we try and ask for as minimal possible data as we can. We're not interested in mining people's profiles or anything like that. The information we take is around the number of friends they would have. And that's the limit of what we look at with friends, just to show that, the size of the pack and the size of the influence that individual might have. And then we track the clicks generated through unique links when people are howling and sharing stuff. We do pull in their name and their handle as well, and so the size of their following. So we're really not pulling in much information, and we're not massively interested in that at the moment. What we're most interested in is building trust around the platform. Because it's a relatively new concept for people. So we want people to feel safe and feel like that we're not doing anything underhand if people use PAC. And that's not our intention at all. So we want to try and be really open about the permissions that we seek, especially, again, in the light of the last couple of months.
Definitely. And so right now, the platform is in beta. What type of groups have adopted PAC so far?
So we've kept the beta really tight, actually. So it's only because, we've got a lot to learn as well as we develop this platform. We want to make sure that it's the best possible, that we sort of develop the best possible journeys for both wolves when they're being initiated into the pack, and for organizations as they try and manage that, make sure they have the right stats in the right places and stuff like that. So we've kept it to 3 organizations. So we're working with MenCap, with the Scout Association in the UK, and with Camden Labour, which is like a local Labour Party. MenCap are a fantastic campaigning charity in the UK for people with learning disabilities. The Scout Association are a massive membership organisation, which we were really interested in trying to work out.
Right, it's like the Boy Scouts, right?
Yeah, exactly. But there's girls and boys in the UK.
Okay, yeah, that's a sensitive issue.
Yeah. But it's basically the same. Well, different organisations with different values, but
yeah. And then there's the Camden Labour Party, which is kind of interesting from the politics side.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to try a political pack and see, how that reacted differently, and if there was a difference, all that stuff, which has been really interesting.
Yeah. So following up on that, kind of what results have you seen kind of so far across the groups, and then what have you noticed in terms of the specific political campaign side?
Yeah, I'd love to share some results. This is the stuff that we're really excited about after trying this, because we made a lot of assumptions when we started developing this product. A lot of this is quite theoretical, and we really wanted to prove some of this stuff, and I think we've had some great results to do that. So I'll take an example of the Scouts. So they've got a Facebook page, just to give you some context. In the UK, it's a Facebook page of around 330,000, approximately, a Twitter account of around 60,000. So just to give you a kind of scale of the social reach that they would get, an organic post from there would hit around 7% of the audience, and if it was a link post, it would generate around 300 clicks for an organic post that you put out. We shared that same organic post through 95 people through PACs, and 95 wolves shared that, and it generated 8,000 clicks. So the difference between 300 from organic social of quite a sizable page, really, and then 8,000, which was remarkable. And that was like the first couple that we did across that gave us those results. So that's a massive markup in the amount of clicks that you would get. And then through MenCap, we've got a slightly bigger pack. So there's around 500 wolves on there. And we shared a couple of howls through those guys. And that generated around between 13 and 14,000 clicks every time we were howling, which is, again, it's kind of amazing. That's worth if I put my paid media hat on, which was my job before this, if you put a 50 cents benchmark of a click on that, it's worth around $6-7 grand. Of clicks, that kind of, and these are like valuable clicks as well. These are clicks from people from their friends and family. It's not through some ad, which we thought was really interesting. It also, after we howled a couple of times, it did start trending on Twitter, which was great. But that doesn't always happen.
Which kind of snowballs it, right?
Yeah, it does help. It shouldn't. I mean, it's not really our objective. Again, we're more interested in that one-to-one connection.
Right.
And then with the Camden Labour stuff, which is a much smaller organisation and a much smaller pack. We actually did a few iterations of this. But the last one, around 25 wolves, which, for a smaller organisation, there's 25 people that really care about it. They're willing to sign up to this new tool, try something out. And every time they were howling, it was generating around 400 clicks every time they howled. So it's a massive markup between like a normal social post from a page of 700-800 people, which is probably what most local political parties are looking at, where you would generate 10 clicks on a post, unless you've got some real interesting people to share it.
And at that point, it's like, why are you even spending time and resources putting into this? Just to have a presence on social media? Or are you really trying to communicate?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, people are trapped in this cycle of they know they should be on social media because they hear it in the news and they hear their peers talking about it, and they see people having these massive viral successes, and they spend so much time and money on creating content. They write a blog, they do this stuff, and they post it out, and 3 people see it or 30 people see it, and we're trying to give scale to those people. Like, we know that people want to see that information because they've got they got 300 or 4 in terms of Camden Labour, they got 4,000 local members. So these people really want to see this stuff. So we just need to put it in the hands of people and give them the confidence and the ability to share that.
Right. And is that increase in the reach and in the clicks? I mean, is that because everyone is simultaneously sharing it and therefore it's factored higher into Facebook's or Twitter's algorithm? Is that the idea?
That's really interesting. So we are currently testing it not being shared at the same time, because I actually don't think that will make a difference.
Really?
Because of the scale that we're working at the moment, and I think it may be different if you had a pack of 10,000 people sharing something at the same time. Maybe the scale of that and the amount of people that sees that, maybe that does create a snowball. But I think at the moment, in the beta phase, the size of the organisations that we're testing it with, I think it's much more about making that individual message really key and contextual to that person. So if someone has been helped by MenCap in the past and they're part of the pack, encouraging them to tell their story, why they're supporting this personally, because that's what their audience care about, that's what their peers care about. They don't want to see this, centrally branded message necessarily. They want to hear the story that person's gone through. So that's what we're really interested in. And it's the same with politics, I guess. Like, why do I vote the way I do? Why do I think this? Rather than why does the central party think I should think this?
Right. So that's interesting. It's not, or at least we're thinking, it's not so much about the just mass, simultaneous production of content, but actually it's a lot about what the content actually is. And, social media is a space for self-expression. And I guess Pat kind of facilitates that. So it's kind of a public endorsement of the organization. And maybe that bottom up aspect is what's driving the clicks. Yeah,
I guess so. And I think people just want to see authentic content. They want to feel that it's real and it's relevant to them. And the Facebook algorithm and stuff goes some way to deliver that automatically in a machine-led way. But I think that people sharing stuff will always be interesting to other people. That's what social media is all about. Before we started getting obsessed with how brands use it, it's around people connecting, and we want to try and sort of encourage that really. But who knows? But maybe if we do have a pack of 50,000 people, maybe that does become the value. So we don't want to. We're trying to base this on evidence as we get it.
It's interesting. And I want to dig a bit into the specifically the political side. Sure. So the Camden Labour PAC, but they have the London council elections coming up. And is that what the PAC is kind of associated with, or has it been going on for a longer time?
Yeah, it's kind of based around that campaign. So I can give you a little bit of context around that. So there are local elections coming up in London. So they are, or they've already been, depending on when this goes out. They're on the 3rd. They're on the 3rd of May. So this is not elections for people to go to our national parliament. This is local councils that have slightly less power and less ability to dictate budgets and where they go and stuff like that, but still very important, and they still provide a key part of the sort of government structure in the UK. But these ones are only in England and only in some parts of England. But this election does incorporate London, where I live. And in Camden, where I live, Camden Labour, there's a Labour-led local government. So people vote for 3 local council candidates who will sit in the local council.
And what are the kind of issues that are around the election? I think it's interesting. We had a local politician from the Dutch elections a couple of weeks back, and I think it's interesting to hear about what are the issues that are actually being campaigned on in this kind of local context.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. It was really interesting. Everyone else should as well. It's really good. So I think, this is a slight assumption, I think most people's voting habits are dictated to by the national narrative still. So something's happening nationally, what they see in the newspapers every day, what they see on the news every day. That's probably what dictates their voting habits. Mm-hmm. But there are certain local things that people will be swayed on, but it's mostly, the councils only have control over certain things. They get given a budget from national government, and they can do certain things to increase that themselves, and they manage services, waste collection, some policing, and stuff like that. So I think that when it comes to like waste services and stuff like that, the councils can determine whether those are in-house or whether those are outsourced to a private company. That's a big distinction that people make. Mm-hmm. In the UK, so Brexit is playing a big part in everything and everything that people vote on at the moment. So that is definitely filtering through. But it's mostly crime in the local area. And waste collection. To be honest, it's a big one.
And so how is PAC being used in the context of this campaign? I mean, is it focusing particularly like putting out content around a particular issue, or kind of just how is it being used in general?
Well, we're experimenting with it, to be completely honest. We are using this in quite a small area. So it's just being used by Camden Labour, which is just one borough in London. There are plenty of others. And this is forming part of the digital strategy that I made for that campaign. So we share, or we sort of prompt people to share broad messages around manifesto and around policy and stuff like that. Interesting difference between, NGOs using PAC and politics using PAC. It's much harder to find a single theme that people agree on in politics, even if you're on the same side. It's a challenge sometimes. So that's quite interesting. So we've had to make messages quite broad to find them appealing, which for the Labour Party is around supporting the NHS, National Health Service here, and that kind of thing, and sort of values-led messages. And this is also incorporated into a wider strategy with like paid ads and lots of different tools that we use to try and sort of mobilize our existing supporters, reach new people, and mobilize them when it's time to actually vote.
And so it's something I wanted to ask you about as well, which is what are you seeing in terms of targeted advertising versus PAC? I mean, that's like targeted advertising is more of kind of like a top-down model, whereas PAC brings in these micro-influencers. So how do you kind of, what data are you seeing in terms of the success of both of those strategies?
Sure. Well, again, it's really interesting. So I've got a background in paid media. So I'm always a big advocate for, Facebook and Twitter ads and stuff like that. I think they're an incredibly effective tool. And we are using them in conjunction with PAC. I don't think I would ever suggest that people just use PAC as a tool. I think there are lots of great things that Facebook advertising does that PAC doesn't do. For instance, the ability to get really hyper local on stuff and specific messages to specific people, which is brilliant. So we're using a combination of those. We are trying to integrate at the moment, which we're testing at the moment, quite a cool new thing where we're sort of binding them together. So we would share a HAL, and anyone that clicked on that link, so let's say you generated 10,000 clicks from a HAL from a PAC, we would then build that into a custom audience that then you could then retarget with other messages using paid media potentially. So they definitely don't live in isolation. They definitely should be used in my opinion, in combination.
And I wanted to ask about, as you said, you're testing this on Camden Labour, which is one bureau within London. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask, how do you see differences if this was to be used for a national campaign? And I think what you said about, in terms of politics, finding people to agree is quite difficult. And if you're having that issue of being seen in a PAC of 25 people, I mean, when you're scaling that up to a national election, I mean, how do you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
How do you manage that?
Interesting. I mean, Camden is a microcosm of the country. I think they have the same disagreements across the country about some of this stuff. But I think, PAC relies on passionate people and people being excited enough about something to sort of, donate some of their social media reach to this campaign and donate some of their, their private social channels to be an advocate for this. So national campaigns are much easier to get people excited about, to be completely honest, because there's lots more going on. There seems to be much more at stake. It gets complete total news coverage. Local elections are much harder to get people excited about because they ask, what's the point? What does this actually change? Brexit's going to happen anyway. What's the point? Lots of this kind of stuff. So I think that would make it easier for a PAC to adopt new rules, because they would get sucked into the hype around the campaign, and it'd be much easier to think, yeah, I do believe in this, and I'm angry about it, or I want to fight for this, or I do think this should stay the same, or this should change. So I think on a national level, that's a little bit easier, to be honest.
Mm. And so, we talked a little bit about kind of future steps with linking it to donations or some type of quantifiable metric. But can you kind of let us know about what's kind of moving, where's PAC going from here?
Sure. Well, I wrote a few articles a few months ago around the changes of the Facebook algorithm and stuff like that. And through that, we've got actually lots of attention internationally for PAC, which has been great. So we've had calls from political campaigns and NGOs around the world to try and join this beta. So now we've got a list of organisations for our next cohort of PACs ready to go. So we're just finishing this round of testing, this round of sort of iterations on the platform, and then we're going to open up to a new lot, and then we'll open it up to a new lot, and then we'll keep scaling it that way. So more PACs, basically.
More PACs,
yeah.
more PACs and more causes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about this could be a really powerful tool when you say internationally. I'm thinking about in countries that are maybe not democracies, where PAC could be a powerful tool for protest movements, for example. I mean, could that be a case, or is it does it take too long to set up? Could you have a PAC come together on the fly and use that to magnify a message in a kind of centralized manner?
Sure. Well, I think you can set up a PAC in seconds. That's it. That our aim is to be able to let people do that. At the moment, obviously, it's in beta, so we've closed it off somewhat. But the idea is that you can create a PAC really easily, and all you need is an image and an idea and a way to get it in front of people, and people can sign up to it. I guess it does. For me, at the moment, PAC works well when there's a strong center. It is a decentralized campaigning tool. It is about giving people a voice, but you have to have the great content, great ideas, the strategic timing, all that kind of stuff that actually comes from a great central team of campaigners or a great campaigner. So it does, at the moment, seems to work better when you do have a strong center that's able to create great videos for people to share, for example. But I'm not, I don't see why it wouldn't work for a protest movement like that, for sure.
But I think about dictatorships, for example, then if they had a counter PAC with a strong centralized leadership, that might, I don't know, warring PACs. Could this be an idea in the future?
Wow, exactly. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're going to have, we might have some difficult decisions around that kind of stuff. But at the moment, we don't have that problem. So I'll ignore that for a bit.
It's cool. I think it's a great idea. And I'm interested to just kind of follow it and see what kind of data you're getting. But Tom, thanks so much for taking the time out. This has been great.
Thanks so much for having me on. And good luck with the podcast.
I've just been speaking with Tom Lillywhite, founder of Wilder Digital and creator of PAC. To find out more about the tool, you can go to pac.org. And you can also check out the Social Media and Politics website at socialmediaandpolitics.org and sign up for the newsletter there. And as ever, connect with us on Twitter at SMNP Podcast. Coming up on May 20th, I'm going to release an episode on social media and cyber attacks with Dr. Arun Vishwanath from the University of Buffalo. So if you're into that, hit subscribe and you'll get it directly into your feed. That's a wrap for this episode. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, signing off from Chapel Hill. See you next time.